In the latter stages of this past weekend into early Monday, I noticed this growing hockey story out in Ukraine, which I'm sure that you've probably seen. I'm sure that a few other of our listeners and other people around the hockey world have seen. It's a shame we have to keep discussing race and racism when it comes to hockey, but that seems to be the case out in the Ukraine in the UHL after a player basically just mimed or mocked being a monkey eating a banana towards a black player. Not to kind of start off on a heavy start, I know we'll get to other topics later on in the second episode of the Chris Johnston Show. We'll get into the All or Nothing Amazon series. We'll also talk about player vaccinations and that whole story as well. We may even have an RFA update, but I think it was very important that we address this story involving Andrei Deniskin peeling a banana and eating, supposedly trying to eat in front of a black player named Jalen Smereck, an American-born player. Chris, I know I'm kind of rambling off on the intro here, but this was just something that was just kind of bothersome to me, and I think it's important that we discuss this story.
It is, and look, judging by the reaction, it was bothersome to a lot of people, Julian, and you know, if there's any small little bit of positive that we can take from it, I think is seeing the amount of voices from around the hockey world that were very quick to come out and condemn this, to call for Deniskin to face, a serious penalty. And that's still, currently up for debate. The International Ice Hockey Federation and the league in the Ukraine are still working through their disciplinary process. But I think it's safe to say that this is going to be a very, very, very lengthy suspension. And, you just hope that, for Jalen Smereck, for anyone else, and there's a lot of people in our game, of course, that, have had to live through incidents like this, probably not as bad as this. I mean, your gut reaction when you see that, just repulsive, reprehensible, hard to believe that you would see something like that. And so, with the benefit of social media, something that happens in a league that most people, even hockey fans, didn't know existed, pretty quickly gets beamed, through social media to our phones and our tablets, what have you. And a lot of people were able to see that. And hopefully it at least just brings yet awareness. You'd rather it didn't happen, of course, but that this conversation, keeps it front of mind that yes, this isn't something we have to talk about in the past tense. It's something that a lot of players and athletes still deal with.
Yeah. And you brought up the player reactions and personnel. Like, I mean, James Duffy from TSN was like the first, I guess, hockey media person I saw comment on this, and he straight up condemned it. I've seen some other past and present NHL players, including Anthony Duclair, who mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, that he's essentially waiting on this suspension, and this could have an impact on the hockey world in a sense with how this kind of stuff could be judged. Do you get that same sentiment? Because I feel like it should. And I know I've seen other people say like, oh, there should be a lifetime ban thrown at this guy. And I'm wondering if they're even considering that. But do you subscribe to that theory that like a suspension like this, even if it's in the Ukraine of all places, like this is something that like everyone should be taking note of?
I wouldn't have been sure, quite honestly, and until seeing just the volume of conversation about this. Sometimes it's easy to turn your head the other way, right? Especially, for me, let's call it as it is. I'm a white man. I'm in Canada. Even though I cover hockey for a living, I've never had any association with that league. It's easy to look past it. And I think it's nice that didn't happen. Emily Castonguay, who's an agent for Lafreniere and a few other players, I liked her suggestions. He said it should be a lifetime ban because teams should just decide they're not going to sign him. It doesn't matter what the league says or even the International Ice Hockey Federation. They don't have to call it a lifetime ban, but the people that might employ Deniskin in the future can just choose not to do that. There's lots of other players, and there's no reason to allow him to continue his career that way. So I don't really have any sense of where the specific league's going to go with the suspension here, Julian. But needless to say, if it's light, they will be called on the carpet. There will be a lot of outrage, and I think there are a lot of eyes on this. There's a lot of powerful people in the sport. A lot of them players and people in management over here in North America, getting a long way away. Charting to see how this goes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one thing to have players from across the hockey landscape say something. And it's even a whole other thing to have one of the head people in charge, or I think the actual head person in charge, in Eugene Kolichev of the UHL, say something. And then you have the IIHF, the big governing body that it is, putting out a statement condemning this racist act. Like, if this is something that the UHL, for whatever reason, soft shoes on, which I don't think they will, I just have this feeling that the IIHF inevitably is going to say, well, no, we're not going to let this stand.
Right. And you're talking about a president who's been on the job, or president-elect, for 2 days, right? He was elected over the weekend at a Congress in St. Petersburg, Russia, after 27 years of that organization being run by Rene Fossel, who's retiring. I think what's interesting is the IIHF has faced a lot of heat in the past, whether it's, holding events in Belarus. I know that there are some people out there that don't like that the Olympic hockey tournament will be celebrated in a country like China, in Beijing, this upcoming February, because of some of the things that have gone on there. Obviously we had 2 Canadian that were held captive for a long, long time, released here in recent days. And, that might change the outlook somewhat, but, all these organizations, when you're doing worldwide business, it can be murky politically for them. I am encouraged, at least though, that's a pretty, there's no way to read through that statement that, that what was meant there, what was intended. And, I think, again, that just applies more pressure to the UHL and the decision makers on what the punishment will end up being.
Okay. The last thing I'll mention on this, and you don't have to give an opinion on it, I feel a little bit more, I guess, torn up about it. So I'll just say it. I was not a big fan of the Deniskin apology, the way he described the act as some act that could be seen with some kind of racist connotation or affiliation. That's just like it's a lot of legalese to say you did something racist. And it's absolute bullshit that, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say bullshit here, but it's absolute bullshit that that's the way you choose to describe it. That's the last thing I'll say on that point, unless you want to add something before we close the book on that story.
Well, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. And you're not pulling that shit with us. I mean, it's so obvious. It's so brutal. I mean, it's almost not worth referencing. I actually saw, we should give a shout out to Ken Campbell, who actually got Smereck on the phone and read his story. He was saying that he's dealt with other racist issues over his time in hockey. This was by far the worst. And he mentioned that the apology in particular was adding insult to what happened here. And so let's hope that the punishment will be swift. It will be very severe. And, hopefully that the support that Smereck has felt here can help him continue. Because I can only imagine, look, this is his first year playing overseas. This is a guy who played in the Ontario Hockey League, was in the Arizona Coyotes, system. And it's hard enough being away from home, but when you encounter something like this so soon in a foreign place, I hope there's people there to support him nearby.